Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's another Tuesday evening, and we are here for our Healthy Hearts session. I believe everyone had a lovely long weekend and enjoyed the coronation activities. I did. There were lots of activities in my kids' schools, and we were all part of it. I hope everyone here also did something or rested at least. Today, we are here with another topic, something a bit different. We haven't done anything around this very important topic. So I really do hope that people listening to us would find it very useful. We're still waiting for people to join us on the Zoom, but if you're not joining and you're going to watch this from Facebook or YouTube, please do join in the conversation. We want to hear from you. We want it to be interactive as always. Today, we're going to talk about learning disabilities. So dietetics in learning disabilities and mental health. Now, to do the presentation and lead the discussion today is a specialist dietitian by name Clixton. And I'm going to invite her to introduce herself, tell us about her background, tell us about her experience in this field. And then afterwards, she'll take us through today's presentation. So, as I said, please do join. Don't wait till the end before you send us your questions. Send it, and we will stop early if there's any question for her to address these questions as she goes along. So without much ado, I'm going to invite Ellie to take us through today's session. Ellie, over to you.
Hi, it's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me to talk. I'm Ellie. I'm a learning disabilities and mental health dietitian. I've been working in dietetics for quite a long time, but I'll go through that on my slides anyway. I did enjoy the Jubilee too. I did a lot of cupcake making over the Jubilee.
Fantastic.
So I'm going to kind of explain to you what I do and what my role is and the way that we see patients with learning disabilities. I'll do a little bit of mental health, but I can always come back and cover mental health and different areas if that's what people kind of want to know. If there's any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. As I go along, just feel free to ask me questions, stop me. If I ask a question and you know the answer, just kind of say, and we'll just take it like that, if that's okay. So I'll just share my screen and start my presentation, if that's all right.
Yeah.
There we go. So dietetics in learning disabilities and mental health. Help if it was moving along. So this is just me. So I didn't always start off in dietetics, although I've always had a dietitian. So I've had a dietitian since I was born. I was born quite small, so I had one for steroids and to help me gain weight. But again, I was always scared of my dietitian. I actually hated dietitians when I was younger. So my background's actually in law. So I started off, I did a degree in law at Leeds. What was Leeds Met is now Leeds Beckett. I then went on to do my law practice course in 2013. And whilst I was there, I was really interested in what's called catastrophic injury, which is personal injury law. But they kept telling me that I didn't have enough medical experience. So I thought, why not? Let's go get some, I guess. Applied to be a dietetic assistant. So I was a dietetic assistant for over 9 years. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I became an assistant practitioner. I've worked in most areas so far. I think the only area I haven't worked in is diabetes. I've mainly done most of my work at Bradford Teaching Hospitals and Leeds Teaching Hospitals. I volunteer for the British Dietetic Association, so that's the BDA that governs all of dietetics. I volunteer for Diabetes UK. I've got a camp coming up, so I do a lot with children with diabetes. And last year I won the Clinical Nutrition Award for Student of the Year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I also did a TED Talk last year as well, which was amazing on food sustainability. And I also do have, I'm also dyslexic, diabetic, and epileptic. So I do have quite a lot of things that some of my learning disabilities patients have. So it's quite cool to interact with those things and share a bit of relation with those. So the aim of my presentation is to explain what a learning disabilities and mental health dietitian does. I kind of explain some of the types of people and the conditions that we deal with. I kind of talk about the kinds of assessments and treatments that we offer. I'll talk about the connection between learning disabilities and mental health. And I'll also talk about the ways that if you've got anyone in your family or anyone you're caring with, how you can help and support that person, whether that's nutritionally or just trying to get them into the right services. So there's a lot of writing on there. I just wanted to explain, it's kind of what the BDA definitions of what a mental health dietitian, a learning disabilities dietitian does. We kind of tend to fall under the same umbrella sometimes, because although some of us specialise in mental health, a lot of us work in learning disabilities as well. And many people with learning disabilities also have elements of mental health or behavioural issues. So we work with patients to try and help them to develop a relationship where that be positive with food. We use lots of behaviour change techniques to also help them become mindful of their eating. We give them education to not just them, but to their carers as well. You're likely to see us in hospitals, mental health units. We do work out in the community, and we also work privately as well. We do work in there's a lot of people that work in psychiatric environments and hospitals. So along with my community work, I also work on a mental health unit, working with people that are quite high risk. I also help with a forensics unit as well. So I do forensic mental health as well. We work with people that have personality disorders, depressions, anxieties, drug abuse, and just a general learning disability as well. So the types of people we work with. So we work with anyone that has a learning disability. I'll go on to talk about what that means in the register in a minute. We work with people that have obesity, people that are malnourished, or people that are enterally fed. So although people have a learning disability or a mental health, people assume that that means that that's it and that's all we treat. But what happens is a lot of those people are service users, clients, family members. They don't actually get seen in what would be a physical health setting. So although they may go into hospital with diabetes or heart problem, there's a good chance that in a physical health setting, they won't be able to meet their needs, and they will then be referred to our team. In physical health settings, they don't tend to want to deal with anyone with learning disabilities and mental health, because they don't have the experience to deal with their mental health or the actual learning disability. So for a lot of people, things like autism is something that they don't want to deal with in physical health, and they struggle to be able to give people correct diagnosis, explain to them exactly what they've got, and then help them treat it. They struggle to deal with that side of it. They also struggle to help people with like really bad behaviour. Sometimes when people are having what we call a manic episode, or their behaviour is quite bad, people in physical health settings struggle to find ways of dealing with that and working and waiting until they're better to kind of then tackle what it is that's wrong with them. We also deal with a lot of people who are enterally fed. So enteral feeding is anyone with a feeding tube. So we deal with tubes, nasogastric tubes that are fed through their nose into the stomach. And we also have a lot of service users and patients who are fed via PEG tubes or gastrostomy tubes directly into their stomach. We do jejunostomies, which are fed into the jejunum, and that's all artificial feeding. So for some people, their conditions cause them to not be able to eat and drink orally. So we then come up with feeding plans, we work out their nutritional requirements, and we feed them enterally. But again, people with learning disabilities, there's often a bit of a struggle to help them with their enteral feeding because of the conditions they've got. So it's kind of, we don't just think about putting them on a feed, we think about the positioning, where their tube may be, what is the risk of them pulling it out, what is the risk of them choking. So along with the physical health conditions, we also have to think about how their learning disability is going to affect their chances of eating and the risk of harm from having the tubes in. So when I say learning disabilities, there is an actual learning disabilities register. So for example, people feel like if you've got dyslexia, ADHD, or you're autistic, that means you have a learning disability, which it does, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be registered on the learning disabilities register. So just because you may have autism and you're on the spectrum doesn't mean that you actually have a learning disability as such, and it doesn't prevent you from doing everyday functions such as cooking or washing or hygiene problems. It can do, but they're kind of the patients that we work with. So people that struggle to do their everyday functions, people that aren't necessarily been to school or can't attend school or can't be in mainstream settings, they're the kind of people that we see. People that aren't able to drive a car, their communication isn't as strong as the everyday person would be. They can't hold a conversation. They're the kind of people that we tend to work with. I've got a gentleman who has autism, and he used to be very high functioning. He tried to go to school, but he was really intelligent, but his behavior meant that he ended up in a mental health setting. He's also because of his autism, he's now under the learning disabilities register. And though he went to school to begin with, he now can't function. So he can't do things like he can't make a sandwich for himself. He can't just go to the fridge and pour a drink. And that's the kind of things that we work with. So although he started off in school, he's now on the register, and we kind of work with him to teach him how to remake a sandwich, how to make a drink, how to get on the bus safely, how to do food shopping, and those kind of things. So that's kind of different between having having a learning disability and not being on the register and being on the register. So there's quite a few risks associated with having a learning disability. A lot of them lead to either malnutrition or obesity. So being obese can lead to having cancer. It's got quite a bad knock-on effect with their mental health, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, and hypertension. So they tend to be all the same common ones that you'd get if you had a physical health condition, but having a learning disability kind of affects those a little bit more, because often they're not in control of the things that they're eating and drinking, or their learning disability causes them to not want to eat and drink, which makes those risks higher. Is there any questions on that bit so far?
I haven't seen anything in the chat box, so.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it and then I'll stop you.
Yeah.
The question. Yeah. Thank you.
So some of the factors that was talking about is I'll start with the mental health. So sometimes your mental health can cause you to want to eat more. Sometimes when people's mental health goes, it means that the only thing that they can control is their eating and drinking. So that's the thing that they go for first. So I will put loads of examples as I go along. I do have a lady who just couldn't cope, and her depression was quite bad. And what she chose to do was to stop eating and drinking. So it's about being able to deal with her mental health and then kind of deal with the eating and drinking, because stopping eating and drinking causes malnutrition, it causes dry skin, it causes hair loss. It can cause brittle bones, but overall you're at risk of malnutrition and being quite poorly. A lot of medication can also affect people with learning disabilities. So a lot of the medication that they're put on to help with their anxiety, to help with their mood, and sometimes to help with their psychotic episodes, they can either cause weight gain or they can cause extreme weight loss. So some of them, they start to put weight on, as we see, and they're under us for weight management. And then as that medication stops, they then lose dramatic amounts of weight. And we tend to have to then look after them for malnutrition and weight gain. People with learning disabilities, their metabolism tends to work quite differently. So people with things like Down syndrome or we have conditions such as Prader-Willi. Those kind of conditions cause them to always want to eat, especially for Prader-Willi. So we have patients with Prader-Willi who it causes some people to just constantly eat. They're never full, and sometimes they eat until they physically burst because they're so full. So it's about having to work with them, work with their families, to trying to get them to lose the weight and keep the weight off and stop them constantly eating.
Ellie, there's
Yeah.
a question. What's Prader-Willi, please? Can you explain that?
Prader-Willi. So Prader-Willi is a condition that affects just causes you to constantly eat. So a lot of people are born with it, and they aren't. I think the eldest person is in their 60s, they've lived to. So these people just are just never full. They tend to have a learning disability. They will eat absolutely anything and everything in sight. So you tend to find families have to lock cupboards. I know Katie Price, her son has Prader-Willi. So they tend to be very overweight because they can't control what they're eating. They just constantly eat. So I have a gentleman at the minute on my caseload, and he was literally going to bus stations, rooting through bins, any kind of food they can find, they will eat. He was pretending to be a homeless person, just so he wouldn't ask for money, he wanted food. So he'd sit outside of Greg's, and people would buy him food, and he'd just eat and eat and eat. And they just get so big that they're at risk. A lot of them are diabetic, but they can eat until they actually eat to their death. People have been known to eat cupboard doors. They will eat fridge doors. They ransack everything until they find food, but they cannot control the hunger and they can't stop it. So it's really unique to find people that actually live on their own with the condition. The gentleman I actually have, he's the only person in the UK who lives on his own, but he does have support. So he has things like a cupboard with a fridge with a lock on it, because once his brain tells him he wants to eat, he's likely to rip doors off to get to the fridge. So he can have certain foods out, but the temptation for him is quite great. So even things that you wouldn't think would be a really tempting food, like a lettuce, he can sit and devour a lettuce in seconds, sometimes including the plastic. So it's those kind of conditions that we work with, and we have to kind of get the person and the family to work with us to stop that kind of eating and to help them lose weight, because as you can imagine, the weight gain is quite huge because they will literally eat absolutely anything. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, you have. Is it unique to people with learning disabilities, or anyone can have it?
No, usually you've got a learning disability if you've got Prader-Willi. Yeah.
Yes.
People with Down syndrome tend to have higher requirements than those without Down syndrome. So you'll tend to find that a lot of Down syndrome patients or people that you find are quite short and quite wide. And that's because their body just doesn't metabolize food just quite as quickly. And they do gain weight very quickly. So their requirements that would give them are quite small. That's another condition. Autism, we tend to find people either eat too much with autism or too little. So with autism, we have people that will choose to want to eat certain foods. They don't like foods together. Some people see it as like fussy eaters, but sometimes it can be literally as extreme as I have an adult who still drinks baby formula, and he's a grown adult, but that's the only thing he can master. So it's like thinking about what kind of foods can we get him to eat? How can we get him eating? Because not only are they lacking in the oral side of food, but it's looking at the fact that he may never be able to swallow whole foods. He'll never be able to chew, and that affects the way that he speaks. But also, just having formula as an adult, you're missing so many minerals and vitamins and nutrients. So it's thinking about those kind of things with autism. Sometimes we have the autism where they feel like they need to do lots of stuff, or they want to cook all the time. Or I have a gentleman who mum thought he wasn't eating enough, so she kept putting more and more food on his plate, and he'd just eat until he was sick. But that's because he'd made his own rule up about not cleaning his plate. His plate always had to be empty. With autism, we sometimes see people making up their own rules. So I have a gentleman who only eats things in ones. So it's really hard to get him to eat more than one meal. So in that instance, we've had to do things like, if it's a curry and a naan, we've had to mix the curry with the naan bread, so it's all one colour. So he thinks it's just one food. He will only eat one slice of pizza. He'll only eat one sandwich one day a week. He'll only eat one slice of bread. He can only have one Baby Bell. He'll only eat one nut. So they make their own rules about food, and we then have to work with that rule and their eating to try and get them to eat more, to make sure that they're of a good weight, really. A lot of learning disabilities, a lot of patients we have means they're not able to walk, and they have no mobility, so they're in wheelchairs. So that can cause weight gain because they're not mobile. A lot of patients that we have live with carers, they don't live with family. And living with carers sometimes comes with a reward system. It also happens in families too. People think that when someone's behaving badly, they should compensate that with a reward, or they use rewards to get people to eat better. And that's where we tend to find a lot of weight gain. I think people do it in general with their own children. So I can imagine there's people out there with children that'll say, if you behave yourself, we'll give you or we can go here to eat. But sometimes in the long term, it doesn't help people, because they then associate, let's do something with a reward, and they keep gaining weight. And we find that a lot of carers do that because they're like, I want them to behave better, so I'll reward them. And then we end up with weight gain. And for people with learning disabilities, it's quite hard to try and explain to them that we need them to lose weight, or explain to them what diabetes is. It can take quite a long time. And especially if they've got quite a few learning disabilities, so they may have autism and they've got Down syndrome, and trying to explain that to someone that they can't eat this anymore can be quite difficult. So it just helps. We try and encourage people not to do that in general, to be fair. Sometimes the other factors are conditions they've got. So we tend to find people who have things like, I've got a lady with Parkinson's with her learning disabilities, which means that she has really bad tremors. So having tremors means that you have an increased energy requirement, which means that they lose weight quite quickly. So we then have to think about her fluid, because she sweats a lot. We have to increase fluids. We also have to increase the amount that she's eating and drinking. We have people with conditions. There's one called pica. So pica is a condition where you eat things that are not food. So I have a lady that chooses to eat bricks. And she's also non-verbal, so she can't express to us what's wrong with her when she's upset. She just chooses to eat bricks and hair and anything that isn't food. But she's really, really malnourished and underweight, and her iron's quite low. So it's working with her and her carers to try and get her to eat other things other than non-food objects. So they're the kind of things that we have. I hope they all made sense.
Yes.
So for me,
I'm saying yes to me. I haven't seen any questions, so I'm assuming that's yes.
That's
people
fine.
are following. Yes, yes. Thank you.
So I think for us, and especially in our team, and especially with what I do, we take holistic assessment really. We really take that and we really run with that. We don't take things on face value. So sometimes a review in learning disabilities will never be short. So you'll never be like in and out with a client or a patient. Sometimes those assessments can take a few hours. So sometimes for me, if I was in physical health, and I was doing physical health dietetics, I might book a new patient in for an hour. Whereas with a learning disabilities patient, that could take me an hour to 2 hours. And that just means that sometimes the food isn't even we don't even talk about food for the whole session. It might just be about how they're feeling, or that day they might want to talk to me about the carpet. They might want to talk to me about going outside. But if that's what they've got on their mind that day, that's what we go with. And we really have to build rapport with these kind of patients, because that's how we kind of get changes to happen. We can't just see them like you would a GP see anybody. They have to build that relationship with you before they'll start to open up with you. Sometimes I don't set goals. So most dietitians you'll find set goals after an assessment, but sometimes my goal is just to assess a situation. It's just to go in and see what that family's doing, like where do they live, who does the cooking, do they go to day centres, can they even speak to me? Sometimes we set short-term goals and long-term goals. So it might be that I set 4 sessions, and those 4 sessions are just to explain to someone what diabetes is. Or those 4 sessions might just be for me to talk to them about what hypertension is. Or sometimes with some clients, I might use toys. If I've got some clients that are into Pokemon, so we talk through Pokemon cards. So it's not them that has the condition. We might say Pikachu has this condition this week. And we just talk to them in a totally different way, and just a way that they understand and a way that they're willing to talk about, really. I use a lot of visual aids, so we have a lot of stickies, we have pictures of bellies, and then they have pictures of foods they eat, especially for non-verbal clients, and they can physically stick on a picture of a stomach and tell somebody when they're hungry or when they're full. And that's just a way of just for them to communicate with family and them to communicate with us, and for them to tell us what kind of foods they like and what kind of foods they don't like. Sometimes we find it easier to talk to family and the client separately, because sometimes you'll find with some parents, they want to do all the talking and explain what's happened, and then that service user just doesn't ever open up and doesn't want to talk to you. And mums tend to give more of a story than a client does, and then you never kind of get what's happening. I have got a gentleman who's autistic, and at first we started doing reviews with mum, and he wouldn't speak to me. We didn't speak to each other for about 6 weeks, and then we tried it without mum, and he'll talk to me now, and his eating was due to his environment. So people forget to think about environments, but he was having his bedroom decorated. So little things like having your bedroom decorated caused his anxiety, which meant he stopped eating. So that session, all we talked about was his bedroom. How did he want it decorating? What colours was he going to go for? Why was he going for those colours? And just by having that kind of assessment and that relationship, he was able to open up to me. So the next sessions, we could talk about more things and about why he wasn't doing things. I deal with a lot of patients with something called ARFID, which is where people restrict food and have reasons for restricting food. So that same gentleman only eats certain foods. He'll only eat digestive biscuits. He only can have 6 sausages. He'll only have 30 grams of Rice Krispies, but he wanted to try new foods. So we did things like, he tried the chocolate button. All he did was touch it. We spent a week just touching the chocolate button, letting it melt in his hands. We then did a session where he got to smell the chocolate button. So he smelt it, he touched it. Then we had one where he just licked the chocolate button, and he just needed to see whether something would happen if he licked the chocolate button. He then moved on to being able to eat half a chocolate button, and now he can eat a whole chocolate button. And this week he actually asked for KFC. So I was really impressed with that. But it's about building that relationship and him being able to talk to me. I also gave him my email address, so he talks to me by email. Sometimes he won't speak to me while I'm there, but as soon as I've gone, he'll talk to me on email. So we really use that holistic assessment to get a really good idea of that person, about their environment, who lives at home, who does the cooking, who's involved with the care, what they do day to day, because all those little things, one little knock in their routine or one little change can change everything for someone with a learning disability, and it really changes what they eat and drink. The kind of things that we look for is kind of the poor eye contact, talking too fast, talking too slow, not being able to sit still. I also have a gentleman who, when we first started seeing each other, he'd hold a pen and he'd squeeze the pen, he'd turn the pen around in his hands, he'd draw all of his hands, but that was just his way of telling me that he was nervous. And as time's gone on, he stopped holding his pen. Sometimes he has it in his hands, but he'll just hold it. He doesn't need to squeeze it anymore. But it just takes quite a lot of time to build up a relationship with someone with a learning disability. So if anyone's a carer or does care work, it takes time. It really does. It's not something quick. And I think people think it's a quick fix, and people get quite upset, and they think that things are going to change quickly, but they don't. It can take months, it can take years. We still use the Eat Well guide. So I'm sure that most people have seen the Eat Well guide. So with anybody with a learning disability, we always refer back to this, but we might not do it in the same traditional way that you would. We wouldn't just talk through it. A lot of our sessions involve toys and food models. Sometimes the colours and just putting colours together is a way that we get around talking about the Eat Well guide. But we always use the Eat Well guide for carers and care companies and anyone going interviews to look after a service user. We always talk through the Eat Well guide and the different sections. But sometimes in learning disabilities, those sections might look very different depending on the condition they've got, because there might be foods that they only eat from one section. So it's just thinking about how do we start to incorporate other sections. We have things called safe foods. So sometimes a person, as soon as you change something or you try to adapt that safe food, they're eating all together. So we kind of work around it in that way. So talking about supporting someone with a disability, with a learning disability, it's all about routine for them. So thinking about having a breakfast, thinking about having snacks, having lunches, having a dinner and having another snack. So really think about the times they do things, because it really does associate around routine. For people with weight management, we tend to stick to this, but we also use it a lot for weight gain as well. Also in weight gain, we talk about having little and often, so lots of small meals throughout the day. And we kind of tend to say use kind of picture guides, and we use a lot of picture guides and reward charts and things like that to establish a routine and kind of get an idea of what they're doing. So these kind of clocks are really useful, just to kind of get them going with what they need. There's some tips for helping someone with a nutrition with a learning disability. So we always start with a goal and an action plan. Hi. Are you joining in?
Apologies. Can we?
No, it's fine.
Ourselves, please, if we are not speaking. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Mm.
So we always start off by setting a goal and an action plan. So making sure that you're really clear with the service user, or if it's not you, be really clear with your dietitian as to what goal you want to set. So for us, if we were working, we do a lot of work with carers. We think about what the goal is going to be and how we're going to measure it. So I have a gentleman with Down syndrome who's non-verbal. But he can point to things like he'll go into the fridge and he'll bring you out the ham and he'll bring you out the cheese, and that's about it. So you can ask him questions and he smiles and he'll bring you things, but asking him what he wants to eat, we don't really get anywhere. So he also has 5 carers, 2 of which are family members, and we have we have mum and dad who are not together. So it's about working with every single person within his life to come up with a measurable goal. So a lot of the time we sit there and they say, what do you think? And I say, I can tell you what I think, but it's about you guys thinking together and what's realistic as a family and what's realistic as a carer. So this gentleman has a non-fatty liver disease. So he needs to lose weight because we don't want him to get things like heart disease. We don't want him to have type 2 diabetes, because trying to inject someone who's non-verbal and doesn't like injections, doesn't like having the blood taken, can be quite difficult. So in that sense, we are working really hard to get him to lose the weight. So I worked with the family, and each carer came up with their own food plan for a week. I then adapted those to make sure that they fit within his nutritional goals, but it meant that it was something that was manageable for the family. Because sometimes it's all right for you to have a dietitian and them tell you this is a good idea, but for someone with a learning disability, if it doesn't fit into their routine, it's not going to work. So them kind of looking on the internet and thinking, oh, that's a great, diet, as people do. It doesn't work, because it doesn't work for them. It doesn't work around their needs. So it's really important to set some goals and set some measurable goals and measurable objectives. And if you do have someone with a learning disability that has got a bit more understanding, reward charts are absolutely great, because you can set those rewards, you can set those goals, and once they've worked towards it, they've got something to look forward to. Which leads me on to non-food related rewards. So again, it's okay to go off track, whether that's weight gain or weight loss. We do get people who, although they're trying to gain weight, they do lose again. So again, I've got another service user who was on a medication that caused extreme weight loss. So his family do nothing but feed him all day, every day. And he lost quite a lot of weight, but we realized he'd stopped eating food at school. And it's not about punishing that person. It's about sitting down and talking to them and asking them what went wrong, how we can change it, what kind of things do we want to do differently. And again, for him, a reward chart really works. So is he bringing things back in his lunchbox? Does he not like to eat around the other people at school? And we just try to manage it quite differently and put new things in place. So that's for non-related food rewards. So if it is something that's non-food related, we'd say kind of rewarding with a trip swimming, or could we go out to the park? Could they go bowling? Something that's not centered around food. So for people with management, so following a healthy eating plan really works really well. So making sure that you've planned ahead, that there isn't unhealthy snacks about all the time. So for some people with learning disabilities, again, Prader-Willi is one of those ones where they eat a lot. We've got other learning disabilities where the service users on a night, they tend to just go and eat. There's no reason for it, but families are asleep and they just go and eat. So it's trying to make sure that those kind of risks and those kind of temptation foods are not there for them to have. We try things like having snack boxes with their names on so that they know that's what they can have. We talk about trying to avoid eating whilst doing other things. So things like eating at the table and not watching TV. Because for a lot of people, they like to bounce around and they like to move all the time, and that stops them eating. So trying to get them to eat at the table and just sit for a little while helps to get them to eat again. We try to get them doing more physical exercise, more physical activity, and we also aim to reward, for those that are underweight, we reward them for trying to eat or try new foods. So we have the Mental Capacity Act. So this is what we kind of, a lot of the care teams are under, and sometimes families. So it's making sure that you never presume that a person doesn't have the capacity to make their own decision. Make sure that if you think they lack capacity, that you go and seek to have a capacity assessment done. And if you do find that they lack capacity, it's making sure that you do what's in their best interest. And I think sometimes people forget that. So we do have care teams that are like, well, because a lot within physical health, if someone says they don't want something done to them, it's okay and it's fine, we won't do that. But in mental health and learning disabilities, if someone lacks capacity, it's not about saying they can't have something, but it's trying to make them safe, helping them make better decisions. So I kind of say to people, it's not about sitting there and watching them eat themselves to death. It's about giving them healthy choices, making sure that there's better options and things in their way for them to have. Because at the end of the day, their life and their decisions are in your hand and their care. So it's just making sure that you're helping them to make the right decisions. Within the Mental Capacity Act, we do work as a lot of learning disabilities dietitians and mental health dietitians work as MDTs, so we never work by ourselves. We work a lot with physio, OT, speech and language therapists, psychologists, nursing teams. And because we deal with a lot of behaviour, we tend to do capacity assessments together. I don't think I hardly do any work on my own, really. So I have a lady who had problems eating, and it was just kind of positioning. And because she has a wheelchair, eating and drinking wasn't easy because she was always bent to the side. So things like that would work with physios and OTs to make sure she's got the right chair and the right positioning. And again, we're able to do capacity assessments together. We do things like respiratory pathways together as well. For those that you might find have choking problems, we do assessments with speech and language therapists, where we go and assess kind of what people are eating and drinking, for the risk of choking. Again, for people with learning disabilities, that also means adapting the foods, and those foods that are finger foods that are easy for them, because texture modification tends to be quite soft and sloppy. So it sometimes it's about trying to adapt foods that are finger foods to someone that only eats by hands, kind of thinking about the foods that would eat really. And we do that with speech and language therapists. Has anyone else got any questions on any of those things?
I think people are just intrigued. It's a lot of new information. So
No, sorry, that's fine.
Yeah, not yet.
I think that's it, actually. That's
Okay.
I think with learning disabilities and mental health, there's lots of different bits and elements to it. So that's kind of more of like a whistle-stop tour of everything. But each condition and disability comes with its own unique needs, and it's about dealing with that person as on an individual basis. So no two conditions, even in physical health, are never the same. So although they may have the same learning disability, they'll never present the same. We tend to find a lot of people with learning disabilities have epilepsy as well. So sometimes we have to deal with those things. But just like in physical health, they'll also have things like hypertension. They may have like they may already have type 2 diabetes. They may have high cholesterol. They always have the same things that you would have in physical health. It's just about trying to adapt the way that we deal with them and their learning disability. And the way that we deal with their family members, it just differs completely. So that's
Wow.
it.
Ali, can you stop sharing so that we can have
Yeah, sorry.
use the rest of the time for discussion? So as always, we are now open to have people contributing, asking questions. Please feel free to. Ali started by sharing her own experience. Thank you for that. Yeah. I was trying to spotlight the two of us, and somehow, do you see the two of us on there?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. Okay then. So, whilst I wait for people to contribute, I have one question.
Yeah.
A lot of these times when we are doing these sessions, we want to tailor it to the African and Caribbean community. Now, I know of one, two, in fact, more than two people in my network who, so the mothers have been told that their children have learning disabilities, but they're like, their husbands do not accept it. That is really something common. A lot of us would say, no, not my child. Now, I know you have a lot of experience dealing with people. Do you see people from our communities, like African and Caribbean people? Do you have lots of patients like that who come to you?
Yeah, and sometimes we have a lot of people who are not willing to make the changes, or they're worried about what people are going to think. What are people in church going to say if I say no, they can't have this? And it's not about that. And sometimes I have to stop and say, in the long run, you saying no to your child at church, what are you going to say when they've got like a ventilation tube because they can't breathe? How are you going to explain that in church? Sometimes I have to be quite blunt with people. Or we have a lot of people who aren't willing to go and put themselves on the register, and they struggle in silence because they don't want to accept it. No, not my child, they're just misbehaving. And it's about talking about this and being open about it and just going and seeking that support. You might not need all the support that's available to you, but it's about thinking, would this be easier if I had this support, if I knew a bit more about it? Just educating each other about different learning disabilities and different mental health conditions to be fair, like with things like my dyslexia, I know it's not on the extreme, but I remember my family being just like, she can't spell. Come on, just, you know, do better, you'll be fine, you know, you need to just keep going, you need to be the best, you're just not working hard enough. And it was because I had dyslexia that whole time. I went through university and I did a whole degree not knowing that I had dyslexia. I was just told I was lazy and I just wasn't, you know, taking the time to do things. Well, we have families that are quite ashamed and they don't want to let the child talk, or they try and pull things away from them, but that's part of their condition, that's what they've got. Or they want to keep pristine home, so they don't want to do messy play and you know, let them get dirty. And for those poor patients, sometimes we find that their families kind of want them to go to day centres, or they want to go into full-time care because they're not willing to accept that that's what their family member has. So I'd really say talking about it is key. It's really being there as a community, and not and asking those questions. If you see a child that's acting up, not thinking they're badly behaved, ask those questions if you don't understand. Yeah, if you see a feeding tube, feel free to ask. Don't feel like it's a taboo thing, because it's not. It's not at all.
And it's not easy. I think, you know, that's why we have these sessions for our community, because if we don't talk about it, then it still becomes a taboo. Because sometimes, you know, you're in a midst, you're in a group, and then you really see that there might be something wrong with this child, but because it's a taboo, you know, you don't want to say it, and the parents don't want to hear it, you know. So if you question or say anything like that, then people get offended. Now, when you mentioned dyslexia, I mean, I grew up in Ghana, so there wasn't anything like that, just like you said. And a lot of African immigrants still come here with the same mentality. So if you're slow in understanding, then you're just lazy, you know. So people here, we don't have canes, but in Ghana, where I grew up, you will be caned and beaten and beaten, you know, until they want to beat you to get the laziness out of you. You know, so I don't know if things have changed now, but really there wasn't anything like that when I was growing up, you know. And I dare say that might still be persistent among African immigrants' parents here, like you're saying, you know. So if you can't understand something, your comprehension is low, you're just lazy, you know.
I had a family that called it the D word, and I'm going, I didn't understand for a while. They kept going, oh, he's got the D word, and I'm going, what is this D word about? And he's got learning disabilities, and one of his disabilities is he's autistic, and he's got dyslexia, and he's got this food restrictions, but they were hiding it from people, and sometimes they use it as an excuse. Oh, no, he can't come because, you know, he's got that. No, we don't want him around people. They sent him to psychologists to try and fix him, but there was nothing wrong with him, and it was just them. It was more of the parenting, and it's more accepting your child for what they've got than trying to hide it and working with them, because he's amazing in so many other ways. And that's what you tend to find with a lot of autistic children. They can do so many other things.
They can.
And it's about celebrating the things that they can do, not talking about the things they can't do. It's really celebrating all those great achievements. So yeah.
Thank you. Guys, do you not have any questions? It's very quiet here today, because I know we have these issues within our community. You might know someone who knows someone. You might have a child who has some learning disability. Please ask away. Another question from me. So from your experience so far, are there some of the clients or patients who get better, you know, with all the support? Because I feel like it might be a lifelong support, or does it depend on where they are on a spectrum, depending on what it is, autism, or do people get better with all the dietetic support you provide them?
Yeah, some of them we have that have really great weight losses, and some of them, so it's about, for learning disabilities, we celebrate those tiny wins. So for me, if someone gains 0.5 kilo in a week or even a month, we really celebrate that, and it's a real achievement. For someone that's maybe lost a pound, for someone else that might be really something that's really sad. But I have visual aids of what £5 feels like compared to like half a stone. So when they get quite upset, oh no, I didn't lose, it's amazing, because to deal with all the things they've got to deal with and the families to deal with, to lose that half a pound or a pound is amazing. So we do have those wins, and they go on to be great losses, because then it becomes a bit of a challenge for like people with learning disabilities. They set themselves their own little goals, like they want to do this, they want to keep coming to see me and say, oh yeah, you've done really well. I had a mum ring me the other day and she was like, I'm just ringing you because he's got on the scales and he's gained £2. And the pride and the joy just in that mum's voice, it was really rewarding for me. And she was really skeptical. Again, another mother that was really, you're not going to really be able to do anything. We've been trying this for years. Nothing's worked. And then he gained and she was so over the moon. But it's about trying it and not being skeptical and celebrating those little wins. But we do have weight losses. I've got a lady that's gone from a BMI of 8. She's now got a BMI of 24. So she's now tipping the other way. But again, that's just working together, and she's enjoying food again. She more than loves food now. So it's about, getting that balance just right, really. But we do have some wins, yeah, definitely. I think someone with a hand up.
Yes, I'm saying just thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed the topic. Someone is saying thanks. There's a colleague of mine. So because I don't work in the clinical area, he lives in the Netherlands. He's a researcher, Ghanaian, and he's been saying that in the Netherlands, he's not seen lots of, so he's Ghanaian, so Ghanaians with learning disabilities, but it looks like, so I think he's just using his own network. So lots of people he knows in the UK who are from Ghana tend to have learning disabilities, and well, he's talking about autism and other ADHD, so me being a researcher, he's always asking me, Hibbah, what do you think? I don't know. I've not done the research in this area. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that. I know your experience is in the UK, but have you checked literature or anything to see?
I've not meant to check the numbers, actually. I didn't check the
numbers. Yeah. No,
but because I work in Bradford, I do see it. I see more of it, I think, because of the area I work in. Okay. So I think at first, to be honest, for me, seeing like to see like African Caribbean people or Asian people with such chronic mental health issues and learning disabilities, because it's not seen that regularly and no one talks about it, it was quite even shocking for me. And to some of the families that do really work closely with their family members, it's amazing to see. But again, for me, I shouldn't have been shocked, but because in my community we don't really talk about it and we don't really see it. We don't accept it. No, we don't. And I shouldn't have been shocked and I shouldn't have been stunned. But again, there's some on our unit where families have dropped them off and they haven't come back. And to say that I know that families can be so close and you can have such big families, for me, it's mind-boggling that you haven't come to see your family since November. That it saddens me sometimes and it quite shocks me, but that's it. No one wants to talk about it or deal with it. So yeah, I've got a gentleman that hasn't been seen since November. So yeah, it's quite sad. Yeah. So, but then the care teams, it's about trying to tailor their needs and the foods that they want to eat, and trying to get people to understand that the foods are not going to be the same, because we tend to find that sometimes it's hard to fortify the West Indian, the Caribbean diet and the African diet, because no one wants to add cream to things because it's already a recipe. No one wants to add extra cream, and they look at me like, no, it's not going to happen. I do struggle sometimes with that. So sometimes it's trying to find other colleagues that can help me with recipes to kind of fortify things, because no one wants to make the little changes. So sometimes they're the families that I struggle with the most. Wow. Or they've already got a remedy to fix something. And I think it's not working, but could you try this? But it's trying to get them to accept that we can make changes, little changes, small changes, even things like adding things to porridge, getting people to have a bit of cream in their porridge. And it's a bit, no, I can't put that in cornmeal. It's not going to happen. That doesn't go with cassava. That no. So it's trying to get them to adapt to their way of thinking and understanding that this is doing you good. It's not, I'm not doing it because I'm being cruel. I'm doing it to be kind.
So Ellie, that's my area of research. So, I study eating behaviors, dietary behaviors of African immigrants and drivers of those dietary behaviors. And yes, the reason why I was laughing so much is that they won't change, are we? I'm part of it. We will not, we are stuck to what we know. Yeah. And so it will be really, really hard, I think there has to be a way around just using what we know, to fortify the foods, because the studies I've done will tell you that, people just don't change. People of African and Caribbean origin, it has to be what they know.
Yeah.
So that's an area of research for maybe people in dietetics who want to go into research, because then they can think of what they can do with African and Caribbean foods to make it, fortified. Because yes, I will struggle to add cream to something. So I really get it perfectly when people hesitant to do that, But yeah.
And it's same with weight management though. It's like, well, we're always eating as a family. I can't not have that on my plate because everyone else is having it. And it's trying to retrain that thinking. And to be fair, I did my dissertation on understanding the correlation between Caribbean adults and BMI. And a lot of it was no one understands what they're eating. That's what my study showed. No one understands. We eat it because traditionally my grandma told me to eat that.
Exactly.
I've got no idea what's in it. I just eat it because that's what I've been told to eat. And people don't, and I think people don't associate problems until they can't move anymore, and that's when it's a problem. It's not thinking in the long run this could be a problem. It's, oh well, I'm moving right now, I can move, I can walk around, there's nothing wrong with me, so so what I'm eating is okay because I'm okay. And it's not until a problem happens that we take a step back and think maybe this was, maybe something's wrong here. So
yeah, on spot. You should see, and I'm always using even the attendance on Healthy Hearts. It's all about nutrition and lifestyle. The attendance as compared to sessions that talk about disease management and treatment alone, it's different, and it tells you our perception. People really don't take nutrition as a preventative thing that serious. It's not just that. It's not just African and Caribbean people. I think it's just human nature. Until the problem is there, then we are not really keen to do anything about it, which is really, really sad, because we shouldn't wait till we have the problem before we do something about it. That's some of the things we are trying to champion, to tell people, please, let's take our nutrition seriously, because that's the only way we know can prevent. There's so many risk factors out there. Some of them you can't do anything about. Your genes, I'm always saying that. You can do anything about so many other things. You can do something about your lifestyle. You can do something about your food and your nutrition. And so let's try and take these sessions seriously. I'm always really grateful for people who are always tuning in, because obviously they see the importance of these sessions. That's why they keep coming. So please tell a friend to tell a friend that we're doing some work.
And if anyone's got any questions on any learning disabilities or any mental health conditions, don't suffer in silence. And I'm always available to talk to, even stemming from, if you haven't heard from someone in a little while, ask them if they're okay, because it starts there and it can escalate. So
Thank you. Sure Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you. And I'm sure we would really want you to come back again. I really learned a lot, even being a nutritionist. Some of the stuff you were saying I've never heard before. So I believe this has been a very useful session. Do you have any parting shots, just one message to people within our community you want to say?
It's time to talk. It is time to talk. It's okay to be uncomfortable with these conversations, and it's time to talk.
Thank you. That's powerful. It's time to talk. It's okay to be uncomfortable with these conversations, but it is time to talk. So please, let's not suffer in silence. There's support out there. it's time to talk. Speak to someone and get the right support. Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of comments in the chat. People are saying thank you. That was really
thank you for everyone to listening.
Yeah, and so we're just going to move on to our next session, which is a box exercise or exercise session. So thanks everyone. Yeah, thank you for sharing the variety of your experience. It is definitely time to talk. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right then. I'll see you next week, everyone. After, please stay on and do the exercise. And see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hibbah. Hello and welcome. I hope everybody is staying on the call for the exercise part of today's session. So as Dr. Hibbah said, we are doing a box exercise session today. So again, a more intermediate to advanced session, especially for the people that have been on the call and following us from on Zoom and YouTube and Facebook for a little while now. All right, I really want to challenge you and open your mind up a little bit more. All right, so for today's session, all you'll need is a space and plenty of water. All right, and a fighting fit attitude. All right, so let's get started, people. We get my tunes ready. To start off our warm-up, we're going to go into a 30-second shadow skip. All right, 30-second shadow skip. Let's get ready, people. 3, 2, 1, let's skip. Let's go. Keep it back to the right. Bring the body up. From the straight step. Straight. Straight back here. Three. Oh, let's go. Let's go. Ten seconds. Okay, take a short 15-second rest, and then we're going to go straight back to the warm-up. Okay, my people, then straight back in. So next move, we got 30 seconds of one reach. We're going to flip down nice and low, and as we come up, we're going to reach high to the ceiling. Let's get ready. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Come on, next one, double jab. Double jab. Let's go. One pedal stick. Oh, that's nice. Take a 30-second water break, and we're going to go into the ring for round number 1. Well done. Okay, people, listen in. While you take your last few sips of water, okay? Like I said, we're going more intermediate to advanced combinations and work now. So first round, we've got a combination round. So your first minute, like we do normally, we have 3-minute rounds. So for your first minute, what you've got to do in your guard, you're going to be left, right, hook, cross, okay, 6 punches. All right, so again, jab, left, right, left, bam, 6 punches to start off with. Remember, only do 2 or 3 in the same space, and then you change your direction and get 2 or 3 here. 2 or 3 there, move around, use your whole surroundings, use your whole floor. All right, people, that's your first minute. Let's get busy now. Come on. Get ready. 3, 2, 1. Let's start the round now. Let's go. Keep that going, people. Fifteen seconds, people. Three, 2, 1. Okay, let's pause the clock right there. So let's add to it now. Okay, so from that last cross, we're gonna add a uppercut cross, uppercut cross. Another 4 punches. So watch the whole thing. Uppercut cross, uppercut cross. All right, let's go, people. Start slow, speed up when you get it. 3, 2, 1. Come on. 15 seconds. Five seconds. Okay, let's hold it up right there. So for the last minute, we're going to add 2 crosses to the end. So watch the whole combo here, nice and slow. 2, hook, cross, hook, cross, uppercut, cross, uppercut, cross, cross, knockout, cross. Watch one more time. Up, cross, up, cross, uppercut, cross, uppercut, cross, 2 crosses to finish. Let's go. Last minute. 3, 2, 1, go. Can you wait for people? Come on. Uppercut, cross, uppercut, cross, cross, cross. Let's go, people. 20 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Keep going, people. Come on. 3, 2, 1. Now rest, people. Take a quick water break. 30 seconds. Okay, people, while you rest, listen in. So next round, we've got a pyramid round mixed in with some legs. All right, pyramid with legs. So watch carefully, listen carefully. So combo will stay the same. We're gonna go jab, cross, uppercut, cross. First move. Then we're gonna go this one now. So jab, cross, uppercut, cross, uppercut, cross. So we pyramid in the uppercut cross. Third time around, we're gonna go jab, cross, uppercut, cross, uppercut, cross, uppercut, cross. Once you've done the first set, I need 3 bodyweight squats. Nice and deep. And then we start back at the beginning. So it's jab, cross, uppercut, cross. Then we're going to go jab, cross, uppercut, cross for 2. And then we're going to go jab, cross, uppercut, cross for 3. 3 squats again. All right, so pyramid round mixed with legs, people. Let's get busy. Come on. Take this back. Ready, let's go on the track. 3, 2, 1, go. 1, 2, 3 squats now. Now, in the beginning. 1, 3. Let's go, people. Let's go. 45 seconds go. Keep working. Come on. Halfway now. Keep cycling through the punches, cycling through the squats. Come on. Oh, come on, let's go. 5 seconds. Let's go. Come on. Keep working for me now. Twenty seconds, people. Come on, keep working. Well done, people. Give yourself 30 seconds, catch your breath, take on some water. Okay, people listening. So apologies in advance. We've got another pyramid round mixed in with legs back to back. I didn't tell you that beforehand because I didn't want to scare anyone off. All right, so we've got another pyramid round mixed with legs. But this time, again, combination will stay the same. So it's going to be a jab, cross, jab, cross. Then we've got 10 uppercuts for speed. From there, we've got 1 jump squat. Boom, jump in the air. Then we go same combo again. Jab, cross, 10 uppercuts for speed. This time I want 2 jump squats. And then from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 uppercuts for speed, and then 3 jump squats. And then we cycle back to the beginning. All right, people, let's go back to back legs. Let's go, people. Same time. Jab, cross, 10 uppercuts, 1 jump squat. Repeat the combo, 2 jump squats, repeat the combo, 3 jump squats, and start back at 1. Let's go, get ready. Get ready to drop in 3, 2, 1, go. Good squat. 3 jump squats. Start back at 1, people. Let's go. One minute down, people. Come on, keep it going now. Keep working, people. Come on. That's halfway now, people. Almost there. Keep working for me. Keep working, people. Keep going through the punches, going through the jump squats. You're at 60 seconds. Come on. Wait a second, people. Keep working. It. 15 seconds, people. Keep working it. Almost there. 4, 3, 2, 1. Our time, people. Well done. Take a 30-second break, and then we pull down and stretch out. Well done, people. Okay, people, back to your spaces. Let's stretch up a little bit now. That off, we're going to take our neck side to side like so. Let's go. Let's go ear to shoulder. Okay, single arm rotation, start on either side. And backwards. Change arms. And backwards. Put your waist forward. Hold. Backwards. Hold. Big loop for 2. That's 1, 2. Back to the front. Hold. Backwards. Hold. Big loop the other side. 2, 1, 2. Okay, interlock your fingers. Push down. Okay, go over your left shoulder. Back down. Over your right shoulder. Back down. All right, shake it all off, people. And that's the time. Well done. Well done. Thanks everyone for that one. We're doing the Shekinah in the house. Shekinah on the call today.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Orlando, for that workout. How are you feeling after? How are you feeling?
Good session, top session. Feel good. It's nice and humid as well, so you get a bit of a better sweat on. So it's good. It's all good for the calorie burning, you know.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing to hear. And what can the people be expecting for next week as well?
So again, we've got boxer size next week again. So another intermediate to advanced session. Really trying to push the limits and expand the mind a little bit. Get people thinking out there.
Nice. So that's what you guys can look forward to next week. So we have another box exercise session, like Orlando mentioned, and another shout out and thank you to Ellie and Dr. Hibbah for the talk before. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email us at health@khan.org.uk. We are always welcoming your questions, and we'll see you next week. The topic for next week's talk will be announced later on, so look out on our social media. But thank you guys and have a good evening. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.